What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Welcome back to the channel. This is a really cool new interview that Kevin Feige did with Rotten Tomatoes, and I saw some of this pop up, like some of the things that he was saying in this popped up on Reddit and Twitter and whatnot. So the back half of this video is particularly interesting, where he's talking about Spider-Man, the MCU, Wakanda Forever, and stuff like that. So I want to just kind of react to this with you guys and sort of give you my takeaways of it. So it should be a pretty fun little video. Let's get her started.
There was a time when it looked like Marvel Studios would not be involved in Spider-Man movies going forward for Sony. It was only a few months, but it was an emotional few months for, I think, all of us on all sides, and a very public few months for whatever reason. But yes, I had thought if it were going, I always want to look at the bright side, and the bright side was we got to make two great Spider-Man movies with Amy Pascal and John Watts and Tom Rothman and Tom Holland. And I was very proud of that and very happy at that. Of course, wanted it to continue.
Yeah.
But
so already, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to be that guy, but look, we're just keep it real over here. You know, I always talk about, I love Kevin Feige. I really respect the guy. I borderline idolize the guy, but everybody always tells me, like, dude, he's a straight shooter. He would never lie. You must take everything Kevin Feige says as verbatim. Bro, if you guys remember, when the Spider-Man deal fell out, Feige made a statement saying that they wrapped up their story. He was happy with where it was at, and it was fine. You know what I mean? Basically said that, and now he's like admitting, of course, he wanted it to continue. We all knew he wanted it to continue. It was a negotiation tactic. He was playing hardball, saying, like, it is what it is. We're fine. And like he said here, it being public was super awkward for everybody involved. But I think really, and maybe he'll get into a little bit more of this, and I've been speculating about this for a long time, I think Kevin Feige had a plan with Tom Holland Spider-Man in mind. It was very big and went very far into the future for Marvel, and he had to change that plan because of Sony yanking Spider-Man back and putting everything on hold. I strongly believe that there was another year of Phase 4 in the 2019 San Diego Comic-Con that they could have talked about that they did not talk about, probably because they had to yank out Spider-Man from whatever projects they were going to do with him in the future. So very interesting, him commenting on that time
always
period.
Want to be happy with what we have instead of upset with what we don't. Luckily, Tom Rothman and Bob Iger and Alan Horn and Alan Bergman and Tom Holland himself all realized, wouldn't it just be more fun if we just kept doing it? Let's not get business or politics in the way. Because the deal always started with Amy Pascal and I having nothing to do with numbers or contracts or politics. It had to do with story and a love of Spider-Man and Peter Parker and the Marvel Universe. And it thankfully has continued like that, and that's where we find ourselves now.
Michael Morbius.
So okay, let's stop for a second. It's interesting to go into the Morbius stuff. So, real quick, and put me on the big screen, chat. Look, for me, it's so interesting to hear him say that. But again, you can kind of see that, like, although he's being honest and forthright and talking true to the experiences, he's sort of just bending the truth a little bit as to not throw anybody under the bridge. I mean, look, by all rights, I think he could come out here. And again, this is speculation, right? I'm just some sweaty nerd on the internet. Like, don't sue me. But I think that my gut tells me he's more like, bro, I have plans with him, Tom, of course. I gave Sony their best versions of Spider-Man and their most profitable film of all time. I wanted to rip their faces off when they took Tom Holland back, and I said, bitch, no, you ain't taking him back, and now he's back, baby. How you like that, Sony? But of course he's not going to say that. You can kind of just see, like, how he's talking about the difficulties. Regardless, still really cool to see and hear his thoughts on that. As far as the deal itself, I find it interesting. He's talking about Amy Pascal, Sony, the first deal. I had always heard it more or less characterized that way, even by Amy, that this was a special moment, that they were really doing this more for the fans. The Spider-Man deal originally of bringing Spider-Man into the MCU was ultimately done for the fans more than it was done for contracts, numbers, and things like that. But there's no way that's what was hashed out on the second go around, dude. There's no way. I mean, there was just too much money at stake. There was too much stuff being held back. It was a big numbers game, and we know, of course, now that there was that massive deal with Sony and Disney, where now Sony has the distribution where they're going to put stuff on Disney Plus and get a big chunk of the profits. So, you know, I just love it, man, because people have told me, like, no, you got to take Kevin Feige at his word verbatim, and I'm like, bro, this is White Suge Knight. Like, he's crafty, you know what I mean? He's crafty, dancing into videos.
Tired of doing the whole good guy thing, huh?
What's up, Doc?
I don't want to obviously talk about rumors or speculation on what could happen, what couldn't happen as it relates to any characters that Marvel Studios hasn't brought to the screen yet. But I will say what I've always said, which is, having been in Marvel for 20 years, I wouldn't dismiss anything. Or I wouldn't rule anything out. When and how and where remains to be seen. It could be, you know, any rumor that you read online could happen anytime between tomorrow and never.
Yeah, so a couple of interesting things with regards to that. Now, we already talked about that a little bit on the morning stream. I personally think Venom is on the way. I think this is a big, again, part of that whole deal with Sony. And he's obviously not being completely truthful here. But yeah, I mean, this is the first time that he's ever really acknowledged it as a possibility when being asked about Venom in the MCU. And I think it's on purpose, man. Like, a lot of this and this whole video and this whole vibe with Marvel right now is basically like, yo, Kevin Feige is definitely sealing the deal and has this massive plan, and he's moving everything forward. And him being the producer of Spider-Man No Way Home, super significant to the future Sony and Marvel plans. So super cool stuff here. Let's keep going, see what he says here.
The mirror dimension. You can't affect the real world in here. Who's laughing now?
You know, I spoke earlier about everything we do at Marvel Studios is from the point of view of the audience, and how do we make the audience feel one way, or how do we evoke an emotion out of an audience? I really feel like I learned that from watching Sam on the Spider-Man movie.
That's fair. That's really cool to hear,
lucky
too.
to be there, working for the former head of Marvel Studios, Avi Arad, and just watching Avi, watching Laura Ziskin, the producer of that, watching Amy Pascal, who ran the studio at the time, and particularly Sam Raimi put those movies together. So now being in a position that Sam is back in the Marvel universe and working.
And
for
now that I'm
Strange,
the godfather of
which,
this whole
aside from Spider-Man, both Steve Ditko co-creations, what was his favorite characters, is really quite remarkable and full circle for me personally from my journey at Marvel. But really, it's just exciting to get to watch Sam work again, and to see Sam Raimi put his Sam Raimi stamp on Doctor Strange, on the multiverse, on Marvel. And for people who know what that stamp
pretty
is,
specific.
They can be very excited. And for people who don't yet know what that stamp is, I can't wait for them to see this movie, be blown away by it, and go, what else has he done? And delve into Sam Raimi's filmography.
Yeah,
which
that's
is,
fair.
Which is one of the best of all time.
Hey, yo.
Super cool. I love what he said there. Let's actually just go back, because he says like specific things here.
My journey at Marvel.
So he's talking about going full circle.
Really, it's just exciting to get to watch Sam work again, and to see Sam Raimi put his Sam Raimi stamp on Doctor Strange,
on the
multiverse,
on Marvel. Okay, so that seems pretty specific to me, right? Like, he's basically saying like Sam Raimi, and I can just kind of, you know, maybe I'm reading too far into it, but he's talking about full circle, right? And his experience with Marvel, and how Sam really started, and really I do think that with the Spider-Man, the Tobey was a new thing. You know, you can argue the first X-Men movie as well, but like the Spider-Man movies changed comic book cinema big time, especially Spider-Man 2. That was crazy. So what he's, you know, that's with that in his mind, he's also talking about Sam Raimi putting his stamp on Marvel, Doctor Strange, and the multiverse. Notice he didn't say the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because of course he will, but he said Marvel and the multiverse, because we think that the Multiverse of Madness is going to be a converging point of many different Marvel multiverses, perhaps Fox X-Men, perhaps Sony Spider-Man, other Spider-Man things, perhaps Fantastic Four from Fox, all sorts of crazy things and new worlds that we have not met. And so Sam Raimi being the one that sort of birthed in this, the Peter Parker of it all, the craziness that became the modern comic book fan, it is fitting and kind of cool to have him now ushering in the next level of that and sort of a consolidation of that. Maybe I'm reading too far into it. I don't know. Pretty cool either way.
For people who know what that stamp is, they
honoring Chadwich Boseman with Wakanda Forever.
Who are you?
Yes, I mean, the death of Chad hit all of us extremely hard, and at the same time as it hit the world, because we didn't know either. And there were all sorts of questions. And our first thought for many weeks afterwards had nothing to do with the movie. It had to do with him and his family and his wife and his legacy. And really we were looking to Ryan Coogler for guidance, as one frankly always should about almost everything in life. I'd recommend following Ryan Coogler for guidance. And having the discussions, which is essentially came down to continuing the legacy of Wakanda and continuing with that storyline in a very meaningful, respectful, and yet still hopeful and fun and exciting way, which was difficult after losing Chad. And I will say that Ryan and our producer Nate Moore and the entire cast and our co-writer Joe Robert Cole have done some remarkable things in the story and the draft, and the team is assembling once again, and cameras roll in the not too distant future on that. And it will be extremely emotional across the board, but I think they have something very special in mind.
Cool. I mean, look, the Chad thing is tough. Like, I was personally really affected by his passing, and maybe it was just the way he carried that burden in silence or whatever, but it definitely affected me heavily. And, I mean, I think he's being super honest here. Like, they just looked to Ryan Coogler, and they were basically just like, what do you think we should do? And as someone who was really the sort of the crafter of that first film, yeah, I mean, obviously, like, you would want his input on what to do with the franchise. You know what I mean? Especially just, frankly, considering the loss of the big star. I mean, this has happened before. It happened with Carrie Fisher, in Star Wars and stuff. And there's always options and things that you can do. But I think ultimately, like, what Coogler is saying, if I'm reading what Kevin is saying correctly, is that the legacy of Wakanda and the difference in the Black Panther movie as compared to Wakanda in the comic books is so important that it is almost bigger and more important than the legacy of the Black Panther character itself, perhaps, is what I'm reading into it. And it's interesting. That's the first time I've ever considered that, because for me as a comic book fan, like, I'm all about T'Challa. Like, dude, I love T'Challa. He's the one that's always in the stories. He's the one that's always done the cool stuff. He has the cool rivalry with Namor. He has the marriage to Storm. I mean, it's all about T'Challa. For me, Wakanda always just was the place that T'Challa chilled, and they were always isolated in the comics. But now, with Wakanda taking this big world stage role in Marvel and differing from the comics, I agree that that's significant and important, and that the MCU should have a major presence of Wakanda moving forward. And maybe it being that and focusing on that lines up with a lot of things we've heard as far as international intrigue, opening that world up, possibly even having a Doctor Doom, Namor type of thing going on in there. Pretty cool.
When you love something, you fight for it.
Eternals, November.
We're the ones who changed everything.
Spider-Man, No Way Home, December 17th. The Multiverse of Madness, March 25th. Love and Thunder, May 6th. Holy crap.
The definition of phases often evolve with the phase, and often I leave up to writers and journalists to decide. That's for the film historians to tell us what the phases were about. Truthfully, phase 4 was always about continuing in new ways and new beginnings. Even with films that seemingly are concluding storylines, there are new beginnings within them. And that's what was most exciting to us about the opportunity to make shows for Disney Plus.
He's talking about Black Widow there.
All of us at Marvel Studios choosing to continue past Endgame and past Far From Home and leaving the Infinity Saga behind to a new beginning. And that I think is what people will be looking at Phase 4. I hope is having accomplished. But we're in the middle of it now, so remains to be seen. We don't take our foot off the gas. We don't take anything for granted, and we all work extremely hard to deliver.
Cool, man. Man, I love Kevin Feige. I think he does good work, and also, he's always on point with his hat game, and I can't believe he found an invisible hat, one that was flopping in and out of invisible. That's a terrible joke. Regardless, yeah, super cool stuff, man. I love the end cap, him talking about Phase 4. To me, again, this isn't like conclusive stuff here or whatever, but I'm saying everything they're talking about right now is still Phase 4 until we get a Phase 5 sort of, oh, here's all your Phase 5 kind of stuff or an announcement or anything official. I think we're still in Phase 4. And I don't think, like some people thought, that phases were going away. He's talking about Phase 4 right here as it is a thing, which, again, really makes me believe that the theory I had way back in 2019 at San Diego Comic-Con may well be true. That the Sony deal and breaking that up was a major hang-up for Phase 4 in general, and that they removed a bunch of stuff from the announcement at San Diego Comic-Con in 2019. There were more plans for Phase 4. Phase 4 is likely about 5 years long, which was why he also said at San Diego Comic-Con in 2019 that they have a plan that is 5 or 6 years out, and so you wouldn't really be seeing mutants or anything like that until then, because he already had this plan pre-Fox deal. Now, I think that might change a little bit. I think mutants will probably come in, but the point is, Phase 4 was definitely something, and it had, I think it had certain long-term story beats that are on that 4 to 5 year path. The Norman Osborn rumor perhaps being one of them, the multiverse thing being one of them, the Earthbound threat versus the Galactic Interstellar threat perhaps being one of them. A lot of the stuff that was rumored in 2019, it seems like that's definitely stuff that's on his mind. Well thought out answers here from Kevin Feige. I'm personally really excited for everything Marvel has coming out in Phase 4. Shang-Chi's looking super dope. I'm hyped up on that. I think Eternals looks really fun. A lot of mystery with Eternals. Wakanda Forever seems... I mean, come on, man. We got to know what they're doing with Wakanda Forever. Are they really going to do Doom? Like, how are they going to deal with Chad's passing? Who's going to be the new Black Panther? What's the deal with all that? What If seems amazing. Multiverse of Madness, Spider-Man No Way Home, probably some of the most hyped up, crazy movies that I think will really involve other franchises like the Sony stuff, maybe even the Fox stuff. It's bananas, guys. So just wanted to kind of react to this video. Let me know what you thought about this. Let me know what you thought about Kevin's answers and how are you feeling about the rest of Phase 4. And just any kind of thoughts you have on this, let me know in the comment section below. As I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I will see you in the next video.